Welcome to another episode of the County Business Sports Podcast, where we'll be covering the great and the good from the world of sport and business as well. From foot golf to fencing, from wakeboarding to weightlifting and everything in between, we'll be sure to cover it and asking guests what makes them tick and why business and sport go hand in hand. The podcast is sponsored by James Ross Jewellers, family jewellers in Sussex for generations. Now, I couldn't obviously do this podcast alone, so I'm delighted to introduce, as always, my special guest, the sports expert himself, sports editor of SBT, our very own Stato, Loz and Sam. Good to see you, mate.
Hello, Sam. How you doing? You all right?
Very well. Good to be back in here.
Oh, no, this is your happy place, isn't it?
It certainly is, my friend. It certainly is. And great to have you with me and our special guest, which I will let you introduce.
Yes, delighted to welcome along today. We're joined by Sadie Mason, MBE. Got to add on the MBE. We're proud to have you in the studio, Sadie. Got a background of basketball, which we're going to talk about, and you're also obviously the chief executive of Active Sussex. Yep. So we'll come on to that. So you're welcome to.
Thank you.
Lovely to have you here.
Thank you.
If we start just by asking you about, because I'm intrigued, we'll start talking about basketball. I've got to confess, I mean, Sam's given me a great introduction, but I have not got a great deal of knowledge about basketball. But I'm interested to find out. It's unusual to find someone who's as, if you'll pardon the pun, proactive with basketball as you are. Mm-hmm. Tell me about how it all started, how it began, and go back. Because I mean, I'm aware that you were involved in basketball at an early age. So tell me.
Very, very, very early age. I started out at secondary school. So I started out as a netball player, a bit of hockey, a bit of athletics, as you do. And then our teacher, I think it was our geography teacher, introduced us to basketball. So I went to an all-girls school, so I thought, well, this is a bit strange, basketball. Anyway, we just loved it. We just took to it like ducks to water. So the whole netball team basically became the school basketball team.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And within a year, we were competing against the boys in Newham, where I'm from, in London, because no other girls' schools played basketball. So we had to play against the boys' teams that were 1 year younger than us. We weren't allowed to win the leagues, but we did really well. So I continued playing. We had a teacher who spotted a couple of us, really, and wanted us to sort of progress to play for Newham, because the London Youth Games was a big thing at the time, and still is, at Crystal Palace. And so that was a real draw, coming out of East London, thinking you're going to go and play at Crystal Palace. So we represented Newham, quite a few of us, and the coach of Newham spotted a couple of us and asked us if we wanted to go and play National League with them in central London.
How old were you?
14. So
just interesting that with the netball at school, then, and then you obviously the netball team then started to play basketball. Did you still play netball? Or
we did.
You'd play both.
Yeah, the skills are totally transferable. Although with basketball netball is non-contact as well, but basketball, you can shoot, you can defend, whereas netball is one or the other, really.
Sure.
But with basketball, it's a fast-paced game, as is netball. They're just different. Yeah. But it just meant that everybody was involved.
Yeah, sure.
And it was just fantastic to see people of different skill levels, heights, sizes. It was so inclusive that everybody could play it. And I think that's what really attracted me to it, to be honest, because I wasn't a very good hockey player. I was okay at netball.
Why's that? Why were you a good hockey player?
Well, you wouldn't want to see me play golf, put it that way. Yeah.
Still give Roberts a run for his money.
Less said about hockey, the better, probably. I wasn't very good at it. But I was a reasonable athlete. I got to county standard. I was with Newham and Essex Beagles, and a junior... not a junior champion, but I can remember running certainly at Crystal Palace against the likes of Cathy Smallwood, who you may or may not remember.
Yeah.
She was one of the fastest women going at the time. And I remember being in the 3As with her and, watching her heels, obviously, because I was behind her. But for me, I was...
Covered in dust.
Yeah. Cinder tracks back then. Yeah. Showing my age. But I think for me, basketball, it was the inclusivity of it, and to be honest, it was played indoors, so I was never going to get wet, as you do at athletics training. So I went from playing basketball in school to basketball for the Newham, and then suddenly being introduced to the world of Women's National League basketball.
Did you know you were good? Did you know you were a good player?
Only when I actually started playing National League. Although I sat on the bench for quite a lot of the time, I could see that I'd developed the skills quite quickly and really enjoyed it and was a good defensive player. I was this height when I was 11, so I was considered tall.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'5" and a bit, or 5'6".
Right.
And so I was one of these players that could play inside or out. Well, that quickly changed because I stopped growing. And I stayed as a point guard, basically, an outside shooter or someone who could drive to the hoop. But, I was introduced to the world of Central London, dragged me out of East London. I played and coached at the London YMCA, which is now a fitness centre. But at the time, had a fantastic basketball court, fantastic teacher. I worked on a Saturday morning teaching kids basketball, which gave me the pocket money to enable me to play National League. Right. So, I developed like that, really. And then, the whole world of England trials started. So I played at under 15, under 17, under 19 level, and that got me travelling around Europe. I was the England under 19 captain. I went to university, and next thing you know, I'm at the World University Games in Edmonton. So
in Canada.
In Canada.
Yeah.
So I'd literally gone within that 5-year span from playing local league basketball to captaining the GB team at the World University Games, and that was an awesome experience in 1983, where you could almost call it a Junior Olympics, because a lot of the Olympic athletes, for example, the USA teams that we saw in 83 and 85, were the Olympic squads. They were actually in college, because then the Olympic squads were college players. They weren't the professionals that we have now. And so, I had my eyes opened up fantastically to just the world of athletics, basketball, everything. It was like a mini Olympics. It was incredible.
Wow.
That's amazing. I guess like that, your mindset and focus around that. And what's that like at a young age to be travelling, like you say, travelling around Europe and going
you
to these...
certainly get to see different cultures. You get to understand that the world does not revolve around Plashett School in Newham. Different cultures, different ways of life, because I was at university for 4 years, and that meant I got to go to the World University Games 3 times, because they're every 2 years. So I went in 83, 85 and then 87. Wow. So 83 was Canada, 85 was Japan. That was awesome. We were in Kobe. And 87 was in Croatia, Zagreb.
Wow.
Yeah, former Yugoslav Republic before it split. So, in 87 we were just watching the likes of Drazen Petrovic, who was an NBA star from their country. Wasn't quite the star at the time, but he certainly developed into one. Unfortunately, died quite young, at the age of 30, before he really became uber famous. But yes, he did play in the NBA, and I just sort of look back on those times. I think, I can't believe I was sitting watching him playing as a student. So sport can take you on a huge journey, a real eye-opener. Just meeting different people, and the friends I've made back then in 85, I'm literally still playing Masters basketball with 2 of them.
I love that. We spoke a little bit about that on a previous podcast, about how great it is for, as a child to get into sport. My twins are 6, and I'm encouraging them. I'd love to get them to get into sport, just because the same with me. Like, I've played football most of my adult life, and I'm still friends with. I've stopped playing at that level when I was sort of 30 or whatever, but I'm still friends with them. We had a reunion a couple of weeks ago with Thamesmead, who I used to play with, and just we're still on a WhatsApp group and still keep in contact. So like you say, them friendships you've been built up over the years are amazing, and I think and that's so valuable that you can take that into any walk, into business, into life, whatever it looks like.
Exactly.
Them social skills is incredible.
It is
really.
Incredible. I mean, I really, those 3 trips alone really sort of made me feel that, there's a lot more to life than what people maybe think, and that you can really reach your goals and really go for it if you really train hard. And in between 83 and 85 was my first senior England cap and my first GB cap
That
as
was
a
when
senior.
you were 20?
Yeah, and I went to Cuba. Never in my life would I have got on a plane to go to Cuba because I wouldn't even have known to do so. And that was the pre-Olympic tournament, and a fantastic experience. You know, just seeing the way people in Cuba lived, worked, what the political ethos was at the time, how sport was educational. That's all I can say, really.
Wow.
It's fantastic.
So it's opened your eyes up in more ways than one.
Yeah, definitely.
I didn't realise that basketball is the second largest sport in terms of participation.
Yeah, it's the second largest sport worldwide.
Worldwide, that is.
Yeah, the governing body as well. It's the second largest governing body to FIFA, so FIBA.
Is he?
That's incredible. Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's extraordinary to think
It
that.
is.
The number one presumably is football.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that?
If you'd said cricket or really?
Yeah. I might just, is that because it's such a huge game in the States? Is that potentially?
It's a huge game in the States, but it's also a huge game in Eastern Europe and in South America, Australia. It's bigger than what we would know as I would say, as a Commonwealth nation. We don't look really beyond your Commonwealth sports. Nothing wrong with that. You know, your cricket, your rugby, your netball, things like that, that we excel in because those are sports that we exported amongst the Commonwealth. But everybody else is playing football and basketball and ice hockey and all the other sports that people can socially engage in because it doesn't cost shed loads.
Yeah, because I can see where you're coming from with that, because I was really surprised. I was at a school a few weeks ago in Sussex, and they said to me that probably their biggest sport, really surprised me, was netball. And it was really surprised me. So I think, and you forgive me for saying that, I think in this country, like you said, Sam, in the States and Eastern European countries, basketball is a massive event. And I think it doesn't ever seem to have really properly taken off to reach those levels in this country. I remember, and forgive me for waffling for a minute, but I remember here in Brighton many years ago, there was a big thing made. At the time they were called the Brighton Bears.
That's right.
And they had they paid
Dennis Rodman.
Thank you. Dennis Rodman came over and played one game.
Yeah.
You know, famous from
I remember that.
Famous from that sort of
Chicago Bulls.
Chicago Bulls, you know, the Michael Jordan, the Charles Barkley.
Yeah.
Is it Charles Barkley?
No. That's,
Who's that? Is that the singer?
That's Gnarles Barkley.
Who am I thinking
There is
of?
Charles Barkley, but he didn't play for Chicago.
Oh, okay. Close.
So there was a basketball player called Charles Barkley. Oh, we're okay. I'll let you off then. What's he putting out singers for?
Gnarles Barkley. Don't taxi for one. Right, no. And Dennis Rodman came over here for one game with the got paid an extortion amount of money. Funnily enough, the Brighton Bears went out of business because of spending too much money.
How long ago was that then? When did he?
Oh my goodness.
That's got to be. I reckon that's about 20 years. Over 20 years.
Do you
ago.
think? Gosh.
Yeah, because I worked at the radio station.
I think it was, because I think I'd just moved down from Glasgow, and I can remember it being, a
big
thing.
Yeah.
Because now it's now the local one. I mean, I'm probably going to get slated for this, but the big one is Worthing Thunder.
Yes.
They're probably the most high-profile one. But again, basketball just. I mean, I suppose where I'm going with this is to ask you about how basketball has changed in this country for the women's game as well as the men's.
I think. Well, I mean, I came through the era in the 80s when basketball was huge. Yeah. Maybe not huge like football, but for basketball, sponsored by Carlsberg and things like that, where you had your finals at Wembley Arena. And, I can remember playing at Wembley. Gosh, that was a long time ago. Twice, I think. And when it was on television with Channel 4 covering it, I can remember running home from athletics practice to get home to see it on Channel 4 at 8 o'clock. And I think that it's very, very difficult to promote. I think there is a lot of factors in this country that will stop it growing. Sometimes it's political interests even, not political as in political party, but the people that are involved in the game and, the self-interests and things. Yeah. And you'll find this a lot with governing bodies of sport where there are particular factions that just don't get on and see the game differently. And I think that, if you think about what's the thing? I'm trying to think about in 2012 when we hosted the Olympics and you needed to have a GB team, and we didn't have a GB team really because the way FIBA had changed all the qualifications, and we had to bring the 4 countries together. And I think that happened in football as well. We don't have a GB football team, do we?
No, that's right.
And to bring all the governing bodies together for the good of the sport is difficult because of the people involved and because of the lack of an overarching vision for the game in the country. That to the outside investor, if we're talking business, the outside investor wants to see the sport. They want to see the different levels. They don't care about the governance in there. Well, they do because obviously they're investing. But they want to see a united sport. They want to see people they can go to and trust that are going to deliver the goods. So if you're going to invest multi-million pounds, you want to know that that investment is going to deliver either the television viewers or the market you're trying to get into, whether it's children and their families, whatever. Investors want to see a united sport. And I think in this country, there's too many fractures. And I think that's probably why the sport hasn't developed as rapidly as it could do, because it either doesn't have the expertise to market the game, or to market it at the different levels. So grassroots, elite, showcase. So showcase to me is like when the NBA comes to town and plays exhibition games. Do we do that? No. Bringing together the 4 home nations to really sort of say, well, if there's something good happening in England, Scotland will promote it as well. If there's something good happening in Scotland, we'll promote it as well because it's basketball. And that's how it ought to be. It shouldn't matter actually who the governing body in each country is. It should just be a single clear united front. And I think that's what the sport suffers from.
But it has improved over the years?
I think the levels have gone up and down. They would say that in the 80s it was, showmanship, a lot of the American players, big influence, etc., etc. And then in the, say, late 90s, 2000s, European influx, a lot of European players, because obviously with the Bosman rule, everybody in Europe could play and you could work anywhere you wanted within Europe. So you saw a different style of game coming in. I was just watching some NBA last night and they talked about a particular person, a particular move, and they call it a Euro step. Well, hello, we were doing that in Europe at school. It's just a move to get around a defender. You take 2 steps. You change direction while you do it. So it's not a straight move to the basket. You step one way and step the other. And the Americans call it the Euro step. That's an influence of Europe on America. We were doing it ages ago, but...
I was going to say, that you do that move on the dance floor.
There you go.
I do on a Saturday night, mate. You want to see my Euro step?
Your Euro step.
I don't think it's called the Euro step.
No,
it's certainly not, mate.
Drunk step.
All right, mate.
Sorry.
He seen my dance moves, though.
So I think the game has changed. I don't know about improved. I think it's changed. I think it can be marketed better, definitely. The women's game, I think, again, up and down. We had quite a push at Basketball England to get all girls playing. We had all girls ambassadors, etc. And then COVID hit, and so the momentum sort of died down. But the market there is there because the women's team have been successful in Europe. They almost qualified for the last Olympics. So, I think there's a lot of potential in the game.
I know. I mean, we'll get on to what you do now with Active Sussex. We'll get on to that in a bit, but. The way you've been talking there, and it's you obviously have an extraordinary knowledge of the game because you've been involved for so long. Would someone like I've got to phrase this carefully. Could you see yourself in the future being at that level with basketball where you try and influence?
I'm getting there. I'm on the board of Basketball England. I'm about to be appointed to the board of the British Basketball Federation, so GB Basketball.
Amazing,
So my strength really is from my financial and governance background, which complements the sport. But my view has always been, if the governing body is seen to be a collective force with a collective vision and strong governance, so people are sure that when they're investing their funds, it is going to deliver what we say it's going to deliver.
Okay.
That's where I want our sport to be trustworthy, to be an exciting game that everyone can play at all levels, and to be inclusive. Because, I can remember way back, and I've seen quotes, and I can't say that I personally heard anybody say this, but it's an American sport. A lot of the Americans that came over were GIs, white, black, whatever. And a couple of the England teams that we had touring were all white. And I've still had comments now to me saying, your GB teams look a bit white. And I guess that's just the nature of the game sometimes. It is inclusive, but when you get to a certain level, you have to pay to represent your country. I can remember at under 15, under 17, under 19 level, having to scrimp and save to pay for my tracksuit, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And that still goes on.
Really?
Whether you're white or black, doesn't matter. You've got to have a certain level of or access to funds. So we help a lot of kids with grants and things to help them to be able to play. But you'll certainly find that some of your better players are from areas of deprivation, not necessarily in the city, could be rural.
Okay.
And they cannot get themselves to the training camps, or they can't afford to stay overnight, etc. And so we have to find inventive ways to support that, and I think that's actually where business can come in,
right.
To support young athletes coming up.
Because that's tragic, isn't it? When you think like there's talent out there that just purely because of their financial, their circumstance, their parents' financial upbringing, whatever that looks like, just not able to fund that. That's just.
There's a lot of it still prevalent, I'm afraid. A lot of it.
Like you said, you sort of ask the question, don't you? Like from the government, from business, what can people do to support that? Because like you say, we could have some amazing players out there that are just not got that access.
And I think that some sports do miss a trick in that they talk about inclusion and they talk about lifelong participation. But if you look at the lifespan of a person, and you can keep them playing from cradle to grave, not that I'm suggesting basketball will kill you off, but there are people in the Masters basketball setup who have made it in business and are running their own businesses and have really good connections. And if the governing body kept those people engaged in playing, I'm pretty sure they would support the grassroots end of the sport. So you've got to be quite smart in your vision,
of course.
In terms of, because they'll have grandchildren playing or they'll have kids playing at a lower level, and they'll want to support them in any way they can. And I think it's levering in things like that as well as big business to show that actually you are a family sport. If you look at the models in the States, if you go to Greece, anywhere like that, Greeks are fanatical about basketball. Really? Absolutely. But it's because everybody can come and watch and be involved.
Yeah. That's interesting. Do you run a local ladies team in Eastbourne?
I don't anymore.
Oh, you don't anymore?
Yeah, because
That's 2 strikes, 3 and I'm out. If I get a third one wrong, I've got to leave.
I'm making notes of these.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
I did.
Can you just cross off Stato?
I'm going to take over this role now. So.
Eastbourne Lions, and we had quite a few players that were university based, and I guess once they sort of move on, the playing base goes down. So I actually now play in Brighton, so I play for Brighton Cougars. And that's quite interesting, sort of running up and down with kids half your age and twice your speed. But it works. I limit my activity. So we play on a Monday night at Dorothy Stringer School, just up the road. And this evening we've got a cup semi-final game actually against Tandridge, and our coach is off on his holiday, so I'm going to be coaching that one, player coach. So that should be interesting.
But the biggest thing, of course, is that you set up in 2015, didn't you, the GB Masters?
I did, yeah. So GB Maxi Basketball.
And this is for the players that are aged
35 upwards.
35 upwards.
Yeah. So we started off 2016, I think it was. I'd been invited to a couple of tournaments in Ireland and places like that, and I really sort of enjoyed the fact that women of our age could still continue playing. There was still a social aspect to it, and I thought, you know what, we could do that here in the UK a bit better. That's not to say that there were no Masters activities going on, because there was an annual tournament called the GB Masters that has been going for 25 years. But not to the extent that it was a systematic thing whereby you could bring in lots of players that can regularly play. Yeah. So a lot of us, we just got together really, and based at University of Brighton, where I am, in Falmer, we just decided to meet once a month and play. So aged 40 upwards, I think, 40 to 50-ish.
And how good
maybe
are
more.
You? I don't mean you individually, I mean as a team.
The teams are good because we expanded. We wanted it to be it started off as a community-based programme, but we pretty much realised that there's a lot of ex-National League players and international players who want to still play. Yeah. They've had the kids, they want to come back into the game, but the only offering from our governing body is local league or National League, and the commitment of travelling regularly for National League week in, week out, when you have got kids and maybe not all the finance, it's not quite appropriate. You need a different offer for our age group. And so we just set something up. We called ourselves Pick and Mix because we were a mixture of ladies from all over the shop, basically. A lot of my National League friends were still either in London or had moved out. There were a couple in New Zealand. A friend of mine that I met here, she was from Latvia, and she had played a lot of Masters basketball. I never even knew that there was a whole world out there of Masters activity. So the programme grew, and next thing you know, my friend from Latvia said, well, why don't you enter the international Masters tournaments? And I was saying, what international Masters tournaments? So that's how I started to understand about the Federation of International Masters Basketball, FIMBA. So it's a FIBA equivalent, but for older players. And next thing you know, we're preparing 2 ladies' teams, 40 plus and 50 plus, to play in the World Masters. In Finland. So we went to Helsinki, and the 40 plus team were drawn against Germany and Russia. Unbelievable. Now they were never going to get past them. They were fantastic. I've never seen I don't think I've played against Russia in my time, but oh my goodness, these players were phenomenal, and they were 40 plus. And our team lost heavily. Russia won the gold medal and Germany got the bronze medal. So that pool was going to be
it's going to be a tough one. It's amazing.
Conversely, our women's 50s, and there's a lot more in that pool because a lot more women are playing at that age. So we played the likes of Brazil, fantastic. Argentina, that's our first game. Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Austria. So we got round, we beat Brazil in the quarter-final, we got Germany in the semi-final. We struggled, so we lost by 11. And we were devastated, but then we heard that actually in Masters basketball they award medals for the top 4 countries. So we were like, we could get a medal here. We couldn't believe it after 2 years of just training. And so we're in the bronze medal game. We're up by about 3 points with so many seconds to go. I don't know what it was. And we lost by 1 point. But for our first time of asking to get the iron medal, they call it, so it's gold, silver, bronze, iron, by 1 point was a fantastic achievement, really. We were gutted, but we thought, come on, you can't be that disappointed. Just come back with a World Championship medal.
That's amazing.
So that's kind of grown. We decided we would play, that was 2019, and that was the World Championships. We decided we would try and keep the 2 teams together and play in the European Championship equivalent, which was in Malaga in 2020. Of course, COVID hit. So we had to stop training. But by then, the team had been recognised by Basketball England, or the programme itself, as a national team programme, because we ran it with physios and everything, all the support that you would have. So we brought the experience that I had and a few others had from being national team managers and being international players, really, to this setup. So it's moved from a community to an international programme, run as a national team programme, and the 4 home nations recognise that. And to enable us to continue playing, they included us in their performance pathway. So that's their talent pathway from cradle to grave.
Wow.
for GB representation. So that's how that came about, and we're still training now.
Blimey.
I love that though, because my father-in-law actually he's 72. He plays for England over 70s
There you go.
football. And he's going to the World Cup in Denmark.
Really?
Fabulous.
And I love the fact that just from different age groups that people, because like you say, to keep fit and active, that's one great thing. But to do it in a sport that you've loved and played all your life as well, and to carry on doing it at that and at that level that's recognised as well, and still be because you still got that. Because it's great to still go and maybe have a game with some friends and stuff, but if you've been especially an athlete and at the level you've played, still got that competitive nature that you go, that you can maybe only sometimes, as great, as soon as we cross that line and you want to play, you're still going to win whether it's against friends or not. But to play at a level where you know there's something
and to represent your country,
just incredible.
And I think it was a bit of again, I had my eyes open back in the 80s, but to be playing Masters basketball and seeing that across the world, it's like a worldwide movement. The gym, I couldn't even get in at the end. It was the men's 80+ final, standing room only.
Really? Fantastic.
And well, it was incredible that they were still playing.
That's brilliant.
Unbelievable, and not walking. They were still playing, so it wasn't walking basketball.
I've got a question for you though, because it's always intrigued me. I think when you watch basketball, and to the uninitiated, perhaps when you watch basketball, there's certain moves and certain points that are real get your crowd out your seat moments.
Yeah.
And in my head, I've always thought of the three-pointer from a distance. That's the one that gets everyone up and out of their seat. Would you agree, or would you say that there's what's the hardest play to make that makes that difference?
I'd say probably the slam dunk. Actually.
Yeah.
That was too easy. That's why I didn't want to bloody. Sorry, I didn't want to just go for a slam dunk. That would have been too obvious.
But it is
because you still. I mean, how many times have you seen that Michael Jordan thing where he does the?
There's so much.
I think I've watched too much rubbish on YouTube where you see people actually bomb and fail really badly and miss the hoop.
Three-point shots are fabulous, particularly if it's to tie the game at the end or because it can make the difference. If you're 2 points down and you need to win, then you want the three-point shot, and you want it with 1 second to go, so they can't shoot down the other end. And
that's the excitement with basketball, I guess. Like for me, and I've watched,
it,
but it's constant, and right up until that, literally, because you could in football, if the keeper's got it at one end and you've got a minute left to go, you're just never going to. Basketball, you haven't got the opportunity.
You can't do that. You've got to get it in.
Literally up until the white.
And it's very, very tactical. So even if you've got 14 seconds left and you've lost possession, the opposition will automatically call a timeout and take the ball down the opposite end because they can do. And that's one way of sort of keeping possession down their end.
Of course,
There's all sorts of tactics, but slam dunk. I've never done one, obviously. I'm too short.
I might struggle with one of them.
I'll
get on your shoulders.
It's spectacular because sometimes you get on a fast break and there's nobody defending you as a player, and it's just aerial acrobatics, isn't it? And it just looks fabulous.
It does. It's the showboating side.
It is good.
Look at the Michael Jordan side. That's right.
What's your proudest moment then, Sadie, as a basketball player?
Oh my goodness.
Because you've said a lot, but I'm really intrigued.
I don't know.
Do you want to come back to me?
I can't think of.
I mean, have you scored the winning points of a massive game in the last few seconds, like we've just been talking about? Or
I think I have scored one in a game. I used to play for Brighton Magic when we played Div 2.
Right.
And I do remember 6 seconds to go, putting up a jump shot from a corner, fade away, so I was falling backwards, and it swished, and we won the game.
Wow.
So might not have been fantastic for international purposes, but it was good for our team.
It was a euphoric moment for you.
It was indeed. Lots of nice opportunities and things to remember, to look back on, I suppose. Oh gosh.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
Can't think of it.
That was a hard question.
But there's something about that as well. Like you referenced that shooting that goal and their moments live with you, don't they, forever? And that there's something you can't, like scoring a winning goal in the last minute of a game, whatever that looks like.
You're still dreaming of that moment, aren't you, Sam?
Yeah.
There's plenty in the locker.
I can remember.
I'll talk you through one.
I know. I mean, mainly they're probably at lower level where you're with your friends and it means a lot for you to win. You know, not so much the international stuff. Although I do love the international competition. It's still such a buzz to be walking behind your flag and whatever. But I can remember going for it was a National League game with Brighton Magic. We had to travel down to Plymouth and we only had 5 players.
Wow. And
we were not expecting to win that game, and we won it.
Really?
By, I think, 1 point.
Wow.
It was.
Good effort.
It was. Yeah, it was. I have to say, I remember that. With our coach, he was just, I can't believe we did this.
Yeah.
We just kept going. And that had to be tactical because obviously you only get 5 fouls in the whole game. And we literally had to be, just tactically aware as to when to expend a foul and when not to, when to take your timeouts to give your players a rest, all that kind of thing.
Yeah. Let's move on to Active Sussex, if I may. I mean, Active Sussex has been going for a long time.
Yes,
and it's one of 2001. And it's been, it's one of 42, am I right?
Yes,
partnerships across the UK. Got that one right.
No, mate, well done.
Thanks. Can I get where does Sussex rank if that ever happens amongst the partnerships? Because you've been at the helm for over 16 years.
About that, yeah. 2005 I joined. I'd say we're probably we're one of the larger partnerships by geography because we cover 2 counties and the city. Right. And we've always had a very, very good relationship with our funding organisation, Sport England. Right. So when it comes to initiatives and, the team themselves, the staff that we have are all committed. They understand why they're there. It's not just a job to them. So really committed to the sport, really, and it's shifted from being sport for sport's sake to sport for social good and just being very, very fit and very, very healthy, mental health benefits, the whole thing. We've just moved along with that, and I'd say that, we are one of the higher ranked partnerships. Sport England stopped doing all that ranking now, but thankfully. But at the time, I'd have said we were up there because I think we showed ourselves to be willing to take on their initiatives, to try it out. We're quite a unique county unique, I suppose, in my view. But, we've got rurality, we've got the coastal issues, we've got a few cities. So it's quite a mix of populations, albeit not in terms of minority ethnic populations, but it's different in terms of not even lifespan, really. I would say, you've got quite a lot of older population right along the coastal bit. You've got pockets of deprivation. You've got pockets where people just don't have the transport or access to facilities. So they're quite isolated. It's very, very different across the piece.
But it's about the charity is about leading a healthier
lifestyle,
a more active lifestyle, isn't it? But it's changed, hasn't it, over the last couple of years?
For sure.
Because of COVID?
Yeah, definitely.
How's it changed?
Well, I'd say that in the run-up to COVID, we were, you'd see all the kids out playing. We'd be running athletics and all sorts at school games, parallel youth games. That, of course, came to standstill, no face-to-face activity. And a lot of people just felt immediately either stuck in their homes, excluded, no social interaction, which plays a lot on people's minds, particularly young people. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that. And Sport England used the whole active partnership network to get funds to grassroots. And I thought that was the best thing they could ever have done. So the red tape was reduced. So we're still accountable to government. But we were able to get funds out to community voluntary sector organisations that really used activity to help people's mental health and to keep them fit at home. So you saw a lot of activity that went from being outdoors or in facilities to being in people's houses. Now, quite clearly, if you don't have access to the internet, then you are digitally excluded. That's the term. But the majority of people could either access what they needed to on a smartphone Most people have one. We know 94% of people have them.
Right.
You know, we were getting funds into all sorts of organisations that were able to deliver online activities, and that was a great thing about the network. They were able to mobilise and get to a lot of organisations that Sport England never even heard of. In fact, we've never heard of.
Right.
You know, and they were coming to us because we were advertising online, through Instagram, through all sorts of media to keep people
give me
active.
some examples of who we're talking about.
Defiant Sports in Eastbourne.
Right.
Certainly some of our award winners at the Sussex Sports Awards last year even. It all blurs, doesn't it? We were talking earlier about Crawley Eagles and the funding that they got to do stuff. That's a cricket club, sorry. And I know, like, everyone knows who Crawley Eagles are.
Yeah, come on.
Get with it.
Speedway team.
I mean, at first a lot of it was online, and I suppose once we were permitted to go outdoors and do some activity, you know, you had just all sorts. There was one in particular that got me, and that was over in Hastings, a lady, Jacqueline Yulden, who runs an organisation called Running Space, and it's for people who have either attempted attempted suicide and have mental health problems. And she used the medium of running and buddying to really get people's self-confidence up, and it's all outdoors, so it was fine during COVID. And the way that organisation reached people and used the same people that were in a dark place so many years ago to then become mentors and runners themselves, that to me is a power of sport.
Yeah,
you know, and it didn't take much investment either, just enough to keep the tea room going, because it was social aspect as well as the physical aspect. Small investment went a long way.
That's incredible, and that, like, you know, we sort of look at over the last couple of years, and certainly from a mental health point of view, from, you know, kids to adults to everyone, we've been affected somewhere along that line, haven't we? With, you know, with what COVID brought to the table. So, and you're right, sport is the thing that, you know, for me, that one bit of exercise to go out of a day and go out for me run of a morning, when you're juggling homeschooling and businesses and trying to do things.
And that's why I feel that, you know, people say, you know, sport's not important or whatever, or it's discretionary, but actually it was the one of the three things you could do during COVID. Physical activity was 100% selected by the government. That's how important it is to stay active.
I couldn't agree more. I think exactly that. I think it helps so many people. Sport, like, you know, obviously, you know, I do firm balls and stuff like that. And one of the main things that I think with the five-a-side football, irrespective of the networking side of it, and which we do promote, is the health and well-being of staff. When I speak to people about it, getting people active on a regular basis is so important for mental health.
For sure.
And I think COVID highlighted that so much.
It definitely did. And unfortunately, during COVID, physical activity levels actually did go down in terms of what people could do, because obviously you could only go out for a walk or cycle for the hour, and that was it. So if you didn't have a bike, or you could go out and walk, I guess. But
no, that's amazing.
When did you know when you first got involved with Active Sussex? Did you start? You didn't come in as a chief executive, did you?
I did, yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I mean, we were all employed
I was going to skip past that.
We were all employed by the University of Brighton because they were politically neutral. So I suppose, you know, Sport England weren't sure, couldn't decide, is that the right term? Who the grant should go to, because it was a Sussex-wide body, and at the time we had the three... at the time we had East Sussex and West Sussex. Brighton and Hove came along later, didn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
So,
that's true.
Whilst all the other active partnerships, most of them, their funds went to the local authority for the county level. So, of course, they didn't know how to split it, so they went to the university. Right. So there were about 7 active partnerships that had university hosts, whereby, you know, in the particular area there were too many unitary organisations to hold the money, so it went to the university. So University of Brighton hosted us up until 2007, 8.
Okay.
And I took them from being hosted into an independent charity. Right. Because in terms of governance, it was far easier to operate rather than being lost within the university's financial coffers, I would say.
and you've quite clearly been able to transfer the skills that you developed during basketball, you know, which you obviously still carry on playing, but I mean, you've taken that into the world of business with Active Sussex, because of course the charity relies on local businesses and commercial support.
It does to an extent. It doesn't. It used to rely on some of it, but actually by now we're probably around 98% funded by Sport England.
98%?
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Okay.
a lot of the previous, you know, when I first started, we would be looking to business to support things like the Parallel Youth Games for children with disabilities, because that wasn't included in some of the narrow initiatives that Sport England were asking us to deliver. And more it's become more inclusive, and so Parallel Youth Games can actually take place within the school games, but actually our children, young people and carers were saying they want an event specifically for them, because, you know, we would take over the whole of the Triangle Leisure Centre pretty much for one day for their little mini event, and that's where business would come in to help support that event, and it wouldn't cost that much because the kids' carers came with them from school. So it was just literally a matter of adapting the building to make sure that it was accessible and that all the events we wanted to do for the children and young people were safe. But a fantastic event for business to get involved in, and, you know, if ever you want your local MP to show up, that was it.
That's true, wasn't it?
They would be there supporting it. To be fair to them, they would stay for the whole event and really try and understand the importance of physical activity to children with disabilities. And it's not just being in the wheelchair, it's the cognitive development as well, the social aspect, seeing other children like themselves around, taking part, and that really did support the whole business to community piece very, very well, because it wasn't just a quick donation and pat on the back. It was literally, this is the difference we're making.
See that impact then when you come in as a business. And you know, everyone talks about corporate social responsibility and what that looks like, but I think it's great when charitable organisations are able to say, right, this is what your money actually does. Because we do, like you say, so many businesses just go, I need to do me. I'm going to tick that CSR box and I'll just donate some money. But
they don't know where the money's going.
But they don't know where.
I think it's very important to know where it's going, and that's why I feel that, you know, going back to this whole governing body stakeholder confidence thing, if that investor knows that governing body is being operated properly and that those funds are going to reach the end user as much as possible, we all know that some has to go to admin, that's fair enough, but if you've got that proper vision and proper plan that says, you know, I know that the Parallel Youth Games is going to cost me £3,000 because you need X, Y and Z for court hire or for a particular set of adjusted basketballs, for example, or whatever, then they know that they're making the difference. You're not just scooting the money away. You are using it because that's what you need.
Yeah,
you know?
Nice. And it, like you say, it just makes it so much more valuable. You know, I'm giving that money, that is where it's going, and I can go and watch that.
Exactly.
Kids actually participate in that sport. I think that's fantastic. One thing I wanted to touch is where you sort of mentioned about the transferable sort of skills, because obviously as a CEO, because how many staff then have you got active?
Only 12 of us.
Really? So managing a team of that like Lawrence has sort of alluded to, with the transferable skills, being in a team environment and as a captain or and getting the initiative that you've got off the ground, them sort of skills, especially from a leadership point of view, taking into as a CEO, have you found that?
It's been very useful. I'm a great people watcher, and I always think that in your team there are leaders at every level, and that's such a true thing. You know, that's not something that I made up, but it's true. And if you allow your team to lead in the areas that they're good at, they're going to excel. So, for example, you won't catch me organising the Sussex Sports Awards. That is totally Ed's forte. He in terms of event management, all the little detail, he knows exactly what he's doing. And for those 6 months that lead up to that event, he's in his element. You know, and as chief exec, I'd just say, show me the budget, demonstrate value, here's the money. And that's my job. And then he will instruct us. And he's quite Oh, when did he join us? I think he came straight out of university. I think it might have been his first job.
Oh, wow.
So we've seen him grow from, he had his 21st birthday with us. We've been to his wedding.
Wow.
He's had a child, so it's like watching your team grow, and he's just an awesome young person.
I've
really
met him
is.
a couple of times. He's a great.
And his
lad.
attention to detail, his leadership on the day, I think is just testament to what sport can do. It really does allow people at every level to lead in their expert areas, in areas that they're good at, and that's the trick of a CEO, is not to impose yourself, is to allow your team to lead and do what's good.
I think that's great. Yeah, that's such great advice. Yeah, that's such great advice from a business owner, and I talk about culture on the other podcast quite a bit, and so for me, listening to you talk as well, that's what I like doing. The sport and business one is so important to me. I think it's great because culture. I used to run a hair salon in another lifetime. I got that culture really wrong. Went in there. I know it was another lifetime, mate. It was another lifetime back in the day.
Went well then, yeah.
That's why I'm doing this now.
So cheeky.
Sorry.
He made the point last time that he was the only one in the room with hair. But anyway, but yeah, it's such. I think it's such a valuable thing to learn. I'm constantly looking at learning how, as a leader, how I can develop and listening to. And that's such great advice, I think, because you can sometimes go in with a preconception. I did at the salon when there was a preconception of what it was like to be a leader.
Yeah.
I had to be a boss.
Yeah.
So I had to be I'm quite a happy-go-lucky, friendly guy, and I was like this serious. Like, no, you can't do it. I just got it completely wrong. So you learn from them things, but listening to advice like that, I think, sports listeners, business listeners, people who our audience will take so much from that, because I think it's spot on, really, allowing people to lead at different levels. That's amazing.
Talking of leading, where's the future for Active Sussex in terms of you leading it?
Well,
do you like that?
I don't know.
Good question.
Well, the government told us we can only retire at 67 if we want our pension, so I've got some time left.
I guess that.
I don't know. I think I'm looking to develop our next chief executive level of staff. I'm already training and created roles for that. So I think that I'm already part-time, because I've gone from 5 days a week now to 3.
Okay.
Because obviously I still have to care for my son. Joint care, my husband, because Daniel has autism. So he's 24.
Okay.
Ooh, 24 now. So gradually, I think, stepping back from the role, I would say maybe in 3 years' time that I will have probably moved on.
Okay.
But trying to keep my hand in sport, physical activity, health, public health, maybe looking at non-executive roles where I can still use the knowledge that I've gained over the years and just supporting, really. But for Active Sussex, I think the next 5 years is quite key in COVID recovery and helping us to rebuild, reinvent sport, try and level the playing field. I know the government has a levelling up agenda. But if you think about the different sectors that we work in, they've all got this microcosm, their own sort of economy, and the sport is no different. Different levels, different issues, whether it's gender equality, race equality, financial inequalities, health inequalities, it's all there in the leisure sector. And I think over the next 5 years we ought to be learning and developing on from COVID, because that really highlighted where the inequalities were, and we should be diverting our funding, our expertise towards levelling that playing field.
Okay. I got sort of a 1/2 question, combined one to ask. Is that all right?
Okay, mate, you go for it.
It's like the last thing. I'm just. You were awarded. I know we've kind of skipped it, and I think it's quite important. You were awarded an MBE back in 2014, weren't you? Did you have any idea that was coming?
Nope. Not at all.
And what?
I was shocked.
There's not many people I meet that are MBEs. In fact, I have to say you're probably there's less than a handful over the last 30 years. So I do not know what's involved. I mean, what actually? How did it come about?
Well, I have no idea how it came about. All I know is a letter arrived on my doorstep, which I thought was fake. you know, like, had like the royal crest on it.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this is a bit of marketing or something, you know, little portcullis thing. And so I opened it up and it said, do you know what? I can't even remember what it said. I've still got the letter somewhere.
You got it framed on the wall. Don't give me that.
I would do.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I'd make sure everyone knew.
Oh, dear.
You've seen my letter.
Yeah. And I had no idea. I said to my husband, do you think this is real? I said to him, do you think this is real? And he read it through and he said, yeah, I think it is.
Wow.
So
because someone nominates.
Yeah, I don't know the exact process, but I believe they nominate you. Now, I have seen the citation now, which you normally don't get to see, and I can't remember who see it. But do you know what? It was my boss at the time, so the head of sport and recreation, someone at Sport England and someone else in my office, I think it was Sally, had got together, and you know how you raid everyone's information from social media to find out about them? Well, they'd obviously done that, and they knew about my basketball as well. So I'd been a London 2012 volunteer, and I'd done, obviously, the work with Basketball England, supporting the under-18 team, and then generally just running basketball, some basketball locally. And next thing you know, they said, you know, all of that is being done in the context of looking after a child with a disability, and which very few people knew as well at work, really. So, I think I was just rather gobsmacked to be...
You go and see the Queen, don't you?
Yeah. It was her grandson. It was Prince William, who did the investiture. And the whole thing was very surreal. Yeah. From arriving at Buckingham Palace, I took the train up from Sussex, and we were on the 8 o'clock commuter train. Everybody else in our glad rags. In my posh frock. I don't wear frocks very often.
He didn't get you a limo all the way?
Nice. Well, we weren't going to try, but then we thought about getting stuck in traffic and being late. And
you don't want to be late for that, do you?
And then we got to Victoria just on time because the train did get delayed. And we were like, oh, for goodness sake. And then we said, oh, should we walk from Victoria to Buckhouse? And what, in these heels? No. And my daughter was tottering along on her heels as well, so we got a taxi, and that dropped you off outside Buckingham Palace. And then you had to walk across this gravel. And I was like, in these heels? I was like... So I'm there walking across and...
Get me basketball trainers on.
You know what? I should have done, really. Because that's the thing, isn't it? You put your trainers on to commute, and then you put your nice shoes on when you get there. Should have done that. And you go into this huge room. So your family goes off to another room where they, as the audience, I suppose. And... you're in the room with all the other recipients, and they give you the programme, and I'm reading through, and I'd arrived on time, but they take you through in batches of 6, and you pretty much go in a circle whereby you go from one room to the next, you get the little pin put onto you where they're going to hook it on, then they tell you what's going to happen, and you just literally follow through, and they tell you when you're allowed to shake hands, when you're allowed to curtsy, and all this kind of thing. But... Before then, I didn't realise I was actually in the room with Daniel Day-Lewis, the actor,
wow. Really?
who was receiving his knighthood.
Wow.
And I totally had missed that fact because I was so busy looking at all the artwork in this place. And they take your mobile phone off you, so you can't take any photos.
Yeah, good call. Yeah.
I did sneak mine in. So, got a photo of the Royal Loo.
Did you know that?
Got that picture of that on the wall, not next to the...
exactly.
Can't remember.
You're going to get another telegram through the post tomorrow. Now you've admitted that.
And I thought to myself, who else? There was someone else that got an investiture as well. He was a member of Parliament and was a sports minister previously, and his name escapes me, but he got a double knighthood.
Wow. Okay.
But anyway, the fact that, that was one of my favourite films to watch was My Left Foot.
Yeah.
I was in the room with him and didn't know. I was like,
Wow.
Wow.
And anyway, there were lots of people from lifeguards to police, people that had done good deeds and things like this. Absolutely phenomenal. And they just walk you through, literally, as I say, you put your pin on, they say when you're allowed to go forward, and then you get ushered forward to go and speak and shake hands. And it was Prince William. And I guess they have an earpiece in so they can talk to you about, what you've done. So he asked me how the national teams were doing, and you know, I sort of said to him, you know, I actually met your parents in 1983 in Edmonton because they'd only been married a couple of years, and they came out on a tour of the Commonwealth, and they came to the World University Games. And I remember speaking to Charles, who said to me, so what do you play? I said, basketball. He goes, you're not very tall, are you?
That's what he said. That's hilarious.
And Princess Diana just sort of wandered by, looking very nice as she did. But yeah, that was. I said to him.
What did Prince William say when you said
He
that?
just sort of smiled.
Right. Okay. Didn't say.
Yeah.
No, fair enough.
No, but
Amazing
yeah.
experience.
Very, yeah. And then that's it. It's over and done within 3 minutes, pretty much. You chat and then you just walk on, you put your little badge on, and you can come and sit with your family.
Oh, I love that.
Here's my question, though. Here's my coup de grace. Don't know if you know this, Sam, that Sadie is and I hope you don't mind me saying this, just changing the subject, she's a massive West Ham United fan. Okay.
Is this where we wrap up now? Is it?
Yeah. No, it could be worse. It could be worse. Because did you notice she mentioned at the beginning Crystal Palace, so it could be worse.
Yeah.
But no, she's a massive West Ham fan. And West Ham are doing pretty well at the moment under David Moyes' second term at the club. Now, my question is this, right? You got your MBE in one hand, and you got West Ham playing in Europe this season. I think I know the answer to that one, so maybe I'll step it up a little bit more. West Ham in Champions League, or your MBE. If to get West Ham in the Champions League, or winning the league. Let's push the boundaries. All winning the league, and you've got
really go to dream.
And then you've got your MBE at the other end. If West Ham to win, you've got to give your MBE back.
Sorry,
what do you do? What do you do?
Sorry, West Ham.
Hey. Good on you. Good on you. Yeah, bless you. Yeah, no, they're doing pretty well, aren't they?
They are, yeah. Good. And I think to be a West Ham fan, you just have to have a strong heart, really. They're up and down, up and down.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, for goodness
I'm
sake.
not too far. I'm a Spurs fan, so
that's not too bad.
I'm the same. Well, we don't win nothing, do we?
He did yesterday.
We did, although I was there when we
tanking.
I was there where we beat you 3-1 the other week, actually. Sorry, Sadie, I shouldn't have mentioned that. But yeah.
What have I started?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
well,
wrap up.
Try living with a Liverpool fan, because my husband is a Liverpool supporter. So yeah, he's quite gracious though. Apart from when Steven Gerrard sort of scored that goal from halfway to. We lost the FA Cup 3-2.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah. No, it went to extra time. Went to penalties. 3-3, wasn't it?
I can't remember what it was.
No, that was the equaliser in the last minute of extra time.
Was it?
Went to penalties. But anyway,
moving swiftly on.
Well, I think unless you've got any questions.
Mate, it's Sadie, absolute pleasure to meet you, really.
And you.
And thanks for coming on. I think
thank you so much, Sadie.
It's been absolutely brilliant. And look forward to seeing more, obviously, from Active Sussex. I think what you guys do there is amazing. I said I've met Ed a few times, and I think with the awards and everything that you guys do is amazing, and getting people active and playing sport is such an important message. So
it's a great place to work. I mean, if you go into our office, on the wall it just says "make a difference," and that's what we want to do. Yeah. You know, it might be a cliche, really, but those are our values. We do want to do that.
Well, you really are, definitely. I think it's amazing.
Thank you, Sadie.
You're welcome.
So thanks for coming on. And that is a wrap, sir.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Beautiful.
Good stuff. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.